Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for choosing Across the Fence. I'm Will Michael in for Fran Stoddard. Summer is a season unlike any other. It's filled with outdoor activities from swimming and boating to barbecues and picnics. But the same summer weather that allows us to enjoy all those great outdoor activities is also ideal for insects. And today we'll be discussing some problem bugs and invasive insects that are constantly on the move. And to learn more, we've called on Judy Rosofsky. Judy is the Vermont State entomologist and expert in bugs. Hello, Judy. She's with the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, where she detects the role of insects in the spread of disease. She also works to protect our food and fiber crops and livestock from being damaged, all this because of insects. Judy, thanks for being with us, and hello.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me on your program.
Well, you're very welcome. We're going to start with an insect that had a name change in the past year. You were in and on the news throughout the spring as the spongy moth caterpillars invaded the state. We're going to look at some footage from a few weeks ago, and as we're going to take a look at that, remind us about the spongy moth caterpillar, why the outbreak, and what problem or problems do they cause?
So the spongy moth was formerly known as the gypsy moth, and in the past, Bruce Parker from the Entomology Research Lab had figured out that in Vermont they had an outbreak every 6 to 10 years. They've been here since about 1921. So we've had a number of outbreaks, but in the last 30 years, there's been a fungus that's kept that population really low. So this is our first outbreak in 30 years, and I think people have forgotten what these things are like. And what they do is they defoliate trees. You just saw in that footage, they eat the leaves off of trees. They have some preferred species, but basically when there are a lot of them, they're just going to eat whatever's out there. They are not that picky. So our concern is that when there's a drought and when there's defoliation, that's a real stressor on the trees. Trees can usually withstand some defoliation. And in a year like this, when we've had a lot of rain, it's not as worrisome. The other problem with these caterpillars, as people may have noticed, is they're a public nuisance. To my great surprise, people don't really like a big, hairy, creepy, crawly thing going up and down their houses or raining caterpillar poop on their heads.
We've all experienced it, we've seen it, and we've certainly heard about it from our friends and neighbors. We're about to head into July, and just as quickly as the caterpillars appeared and ate and ate and ate, now they're gone. So what are they doing now?
So now that they're big enough, thanks to all the food that they ate from your neighbor's trees, they are going to spin cocoons. That's called pupation in science lingo. And they'll emerge in a couple of weeks as adults. They'll mate. They don't eat as adults, but they mate, and they'll lay those beige oval egg masses. So if you see the cocoons and you want to have fewer of them in the world, you could collect those and put them in soapy water to kill them. And you can also scrape off the egg masses. So they're just hanging out.
Judy, you mentioned the work of Bruce Parker related to weather and studying all this. How much of a factor is weather in creating the conditions for this kind of insect? I don't know sure if it's an outbreak or an infestation. Scientifically, there's probably a difference, and I'm sorry I don't know.
No, that's okay. So I think an outbreak is a word that we use for an existing population that increases in number. So you have an outbreak cycle where, you know, the population will build, and then it will be high for a couple of years, and then the natural enemies of the insect will cause that population to crash, and it will stay at low numbers. So it cycles over time. Whereas an infestation can be like a sudden appearance of something. I mean, I'm kind of making that up, but that would be my guess for how we use those words.
The point in part is that we've seen over time weather, and we won't get into it because it could be a whole program, that changing climate and weather they are significant factors in the appearance, the outbreak, the infestations that we see and experience.
Right, exactly. And so the weather in this case, I'm told that since 2016, we've had a drought in at least one season per year. So that sustained dry conditions probably contributed to the decrease in the fungal population. So less fungus allowed the spongy moth population to increase to the levels that we're seeing, so that natural enemy, that fungus, no longer kept the spongy moth population suppressed. So that's definitely a climate-related phenomena because it usually rains plenty in Vermont.
So not putting you on the spot and no crystal ball here, but if that's the case, that these climate conditions matter, you as scientists can help model these? In other words, can we know that we're going to see the same level of our friends, the spongy moth caterpillars, a year from now?
I'm hoping that the fungus has come back because of the rainy weather. You know, these things are difficult to predict because after all these years, we still don't really know what exactly causes the spongy moth populations to go up. I assume it's a, you know, convergent set of favorable conditions that allow them to suddenly proliferate. But despite years and years and years of study, we don't have a spot-on answer. We can say that, yeah, if we have longer periods of increased dry weather, we'll probably see more spongy moth outbreaks than we had because that fungus will no longer be able to proliferate and control the caterpillars.
Well, we are learning more all the time thanks to work of Bruce and others like you. We know that transportation is often the key factor or a key factor when it comes to invasive insects. A couple of quick examples. The emerald ash borer likely arrived, I believe, on shipping cargoes. The hemlock woolly adelgid came on ornamental plants. In early June, you and your agency asked Vermonters to be on the lookout for a new invasive. It's called the spotted lanternfly. Why is this insect a concern? And we've got some pictures that we'll get into. But why is this insect a concern?
So this is a fairly new invader to the US. It was found in Pennsylvania in 2014, and it's been spreading ever since. It is not a tree killer like the emerald ash borer, but it can definitely hurt the growth of plants and causes some damage. And it's a nuisance species too. It's hard to stop. They move around a lot. So by the time you get, you know, the pest control guy to come over to your house and spray them, I shouldn't say guy, I should say person, to come spray them, they've moved on. So they're difficult to control. They're abundant. We do not have them in the state yet, and we're trying very hard to keep them out. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about them here.
Well, I know that that's a major goal that you're trying to accomplish, and you've said on many occasions that whether it's this or something else, that the most important thing is public awareness. So our director, Brock Sutterfield, is going to roll through some pictures. The first, or the next one we're going to see right there is called the nymph stage. And Judy, how long does this stage last if we were to see this somewhere?
Okay, so to get slightly technical, nymphs are the immature stages of the insect, and they go through 4 stages. So these guys are black with white spots, and they go through 3 what we call instars or molts. And so they're going to be around from, you know, maybe April to June. That's weather dependent. We probably won't ever see them in April in Vermont. It's too cold up here. And then that's the late nymph stage, the late immature that's red with the white spots and black markings. And those will come, you know, a little later, so June to July. And then that's the adult. And in July, they were going to start appearing, and they'll go through December. But the good thing about this insect is a hard frost will kill the adults. So again, climate change rearing its head. I remember many years ago, I had an open top Jeep, and it would get really cold at the end of August, and we'd have a frost. But that frost date has changed. Sometimes we go into October without a killing frost. So that might help protect us from this insect if we get a good hard frost and knock off
that. And again, we've talked about awareness, and we'll have one more picture in just a moment. But the reason that we're talking about this, it's not here, but it did, I believe, come into the state in a very unique situation. It came in briefly and was discovered, and it was destroyed with the exception of a sample that ended up, I believe, in your department. The point being is it's not here, but we know it could be here. And
exactly.
That's why you want to raise awareness. So let's go back to our final picture, Brock. We see across the top A, B, C, D, and E. The point is those are the stages, the egg masses, the nymph, So again, this life cycle is somewhat unique. We can recognize these insects, these bugs at just about any stage. They're pretty unique.
That's so true. They don't look a lot like anything else we have up here. And yeah, so if citizens out there can definitely help keep this pest out of the state. If you see something like it, I think Will is going to tell you about vtinvasives.org. That's a great place to report it. So if you see it, you take a picture of it and you report it, or you use your phone to send any information about it, and we will follow up and check on that.
And as you're pointing out, you could have done it too. It's a great time to note that if you see the spotted lanternfly, any other invasive species, go to the website that Brock's put on your screen, vtinvasives.org. As Judy mentioned, you can file a report directly from there, take a picture, and there are detailed pictures and descriptions of the invasive insects so you can learn more about each of them. Judy, I got about a minute and a half left, and I want to just venture over to our friends in the state of Maine. It's another bug. It's not here yet, at least as far as I understand. It's the brown-tailed moth, and again, a couple of pictures in the caterpillar stage. I guess the unique thing is those two spots. But again, why are we concerned about this? It's been in Maine for a while and it hasn't come here, so what's the issue?
So it has been in Maine and it's stayed in coastal areas, and it's actually historically down in Boston too, but again, sticking to the coast. But in recent years, it's been expanding westwards, and it's, you know, it's almost ready, poised to move into Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I don't think it's there yet, but it has, you know, some health effects, adverse health effects. Those hairs you saw on it can leave its body and they travel through the air and they cause skin rashes and they can cause lung irritation. So definitely a problem. If you've ever been to Portland, Maine, they nest up in trees. They're also a defoliator, so not a pest you really want to have around, but it's more the human impact that's different about this. I mean, I know spongy moths are annoying and people hate them, but they don't really do anything bad to you. But these brown-tailed moths have been a really significant issue in some parts of Maine.
Judy, I'm going to have to stop us there and invite you to come back and we'll learn more about it. We've learned a lot from you and I want to thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you so much. This is a great public service. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you. That is our program and we know you have choices, so thank you for choosing us. I'm Will Michael, inviting you to join us back here each weekday afternoon for another visit Across the Fence.